Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and this is the Voice of the Global South, your weekly guide to everything that's happening in Latin America and the Caribbean, Africa, Asia and Oceania. All right, on the show this week, the Philippines stands up to China's bullying. Will other ASEAN countries take a cue from Manila and call Beijing's bluff? As the world looks to Baku for COP29, will there be a change of approach on climate change? And from troubled past to promising future, a look at Timor-Leste's journey over the past 2 decades. All that and much, much more coming up on Voice of the Global South. Monday, the 19th of August 2024. In the wee hours of the morning, a Chinese vessel collides with 2 Philippine boats. This near the Sabina Shoal, or Escoda Shoal as Manila calls it. Now, a shoal is a naturally occurring body of sand that remains submerged underwater at all times. The shoal is located in the West Philippine Sea, about 140 kilometers from Palawan, an island in the Philippine archipelago. Manila says the shoal falls within its exclusive economic zone. Now, Jonathan Malaya, a spokesperson of the Philippine National Security Council, says the collision caused structural damage to its boats. The Chinese vessel rammed one of the 2 Philippine boats twice. The collision gave rise to a war of words between Manila and Beijing, and it raised tensions all over again in the Indo-Pacific. Now, what is equally worrying is that such incidents are taking place with an alarming regularity in the waters near the Philippines. And almost always, it is China that's allegedly guilty of rash and negligent behavior. So what is China really up to? Why is it provoking tensions in the Indo-Pacific? And how is the Philippines responding to the challenges posed by China? Right, so I'll attempt to give you the answers over the course of this program. But first, what I'm about to tell you is a story of an old rusty ship of World War II vintage as much as it is about war by other means. Sun Tzu, a 6th century BCE military strategist, said all warfare is based on deception. And true to form, China has used subterfuge and deception to seize the mischief reef that's located in the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. Now, that was in the mid-1990s. Not to be outdone, the Philippines tasked its Navy chief with a secret mission. On 9th May 1999, he was to deliberately run a ship aground without China knowing on the Ayungin Shoal, also known as the Second Thomas Shoal. The then Philippine Navy chief picked the BRP Sierra Madre for the mission. The United States had built this naval vessel for use in the Second World War. It was commissioned into the U.S. Navy in 1944. Subsequently, the 100-foot-long ship saw action during the Vietnam War. In 1976, the Philippines acquired the ship from Vietnam. The Philippine Navy named it BRP Sierra Madre after the longest mountain range in the Philippines. Now, the names of commissioned ships of the Philippine Navy are prefixed with the letters BRP, which means Ship of the Republic of the Philippines in the Tagalog language. The BRP Sierra Madre was left on the Ayungin Shoal, which is a part of the mostly uninhabited Spratly Islands, in order to reinforce Manila's claim to the shoal and stop any moves by China to seize it. Now, the Spratlys consist of 12 islands. Many of these reefs and shoals there remain permanently submerged below the sea. The Ayungin Shoal is located less than 400 kilometers from the province of Palawan in the Philippines. The decision to run a ship aground on the second Thomas Shoal deterred Chinese design to usurp more of Philippines' territory. Since then, a small contingent of Philippine troops has taken turns to live aboard the rusty ship. Food, water and other amenities are regularly supplied to the troops. But in the last few years, China started aggressive maneuvers in the area, raising fears of an escalation of conflict in the region. So what explains the Chinese behavior? Philippine officials and security experts fear that China is plotting to take over the Ayungin Shoal and militarize it, just as it did with the Mischief Reef, which is located 40 kilometers away. The apprehensions are not unfounded. Like the Mischief Reef in the mid-1990s, China occupied the Scarborough Shoal by stealth in 2012. The Scarborough Shoal is a rock in the South China Sea, about 220-odd kilometers west of the Philippine island of Luzon. Now, there are no structures built on an Scarborough Shoal, but it's effectively controlled by China, which has maintained a constant Coast Guard presence there since 2012. Jonathan Malaya from the Philippines National Security Council says the second Thomas Shoal is a good site for a military base and China has the money to turn it into one. So that's why China wanted it. Now, the BRP Sierra Madre has been at the center of at least 8 maritime confrontations in the past 18 months alone. In one such confrontation at sea, China's largest Coast Guard vessel anchored in Manila's exclusive economic zone. The 165-meter so-called monster ship entered Manila's EEZ in the first week of July. In another confrontation, a Philippine sailor lost a finger after being rammed by a Chinese ship. A footage of the incident released by the Philippines military showed Chinese Coast Guard personnel brandishing an axe and other bladed or pointed tools at the Philippine soldiers and slashing their rubber boat. Now, similar confrontations have taken place in the past too. For instance, 30th April 2024, the Philippines accuses China's Coast Guard of harassment and damaging 2 of its boats. 24th March 2024, China's Coast Guard uses water cannon on a Philippine ship that was carrying out a resupply mission for its troops. The ship was damaged and its crew was injured. And February 2023, the Philippines accuses China's Coast Guard of directing a military-grade laser at one of its ships. On 22nd July 2024, China and the Philippines reached an agreement that was limited in its scope. The pact allows for Philippine resupply missions to its soldiers aboard this grounded ship. What does the agreement say? Well, neither Beijing nor Manila have released a text of the agreement so far. Consequently, differences sprang up just as quickly as the agreement was announced. What is clear, though, is this, that both sides continue to hold on to their respective territorial claims. Manila says the pact will not prejudice its national position. So why is it called a provisional arrangement? Well, the Philippines will only say that what the two sides agreed to is really a common understanding. When and how this understanding would be implemented is not certain. Manila says it remains ready to implement it and urges Beijing to do the same. For its part, the Chinese Foreign Ministry calls it a temporary arrangement, implying thereby that it is only an interim deal. A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson says the move reflected Beijing's goodwill or magnanimity. But a U.S. diplomat, Daniel Crittenbrink, had this to say about the pact. He says, "I think the key now from our vantage will be to ensure that it is implemented, number one, and number two, that China ceases its provocative and destabilizing activities around Second Thomas Shoal that we've seen in recent weeks. But differences persist. One, China wants the Philippines to tow away the grounded warship. And two, China says it will not accept the Philippines shipping large amounts of building materials to the shoal. Now, this is what the Chinese Foreign Ministry said in a statement. Between now and when the warship is stowed away, should the Philippines need to send living necessities to the personnel living on the warship, China is willing to allow it in a humanitarian spirit if the Philippines informs China in advance and after on-site verification is conducted. Now, for its part, the Philippines says it will not submit to inspections from China. Philippine National Security Advisor Eduardo Ano says the arrangement does not include agreeing to Chinese vessels conducting on-site inspections. The Philippines is also against informing China in advance about its resupply missions. The U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the U.S. will do what is necessary to see that the Philippines is able to resupply the ship. He told the Aspen Security Forum conference in the U.S. state of Colorado on 19th July that the U.S. has made clear to China that a mutual defense treaty between the U.S. and the Philippines applies to the BRP Sierra Madre ship as well.
To consult very closely with the Philippines, because these are decisions they should lead on. How to most effectively reprovision this ship so that the sailors on board have the food and water and other provisions they need to continue to fulfill their mission. And we will do what is necessary with the Philippines to see to it that that happens.
The Philippines is in no mood to relent. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. said in his annual State of the Nation address on 22nd July that his country cannot yield or waver.
We continuously try to find ways to de-escalate tensions in contested areas with our counterparts, without compromising our position and our principles. I know that our neighbors too are doing their best to make this work. The Philippines cannot yield. The Philippines cannot waver.
Now, China claims nearly all of the South China Sea, including territories in the exclusive economic zones of the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled that most of China's claims in the area were illegal, a decision that Beijing has rejected. Manila says that in April 2024, its scientists discovered crushed corals on the Escoda or Sabina Shoal. It fears that China plans to build an artificial island there, much like it did elsewhere in the area, and gobble up more territory falling in the EEZ of the Philippines by forcing Manila out from the Second Thomas Shoal, where the Sierra Madre is grounded, and pushing further eastwards towards the Escoda or Sabina Shoal. Now, the question is, will Manila's unorthodox tactic of grounding the BRP Sierra Madre spawn similar maneuvers by other ASEAN countries against China? Will it spur Vietnam, Malaysia or Brunei to call Beijing's bluff? As they say, watch this space. All right, so that was all about the latest maritime tensions between the Philippines and China. And now to our weekly poll where you, the viewer, get to have your say. We're asking, like the Philippines, do you think more ASEAN countries should stand up to China? Yes or no? What do you think? I repeat, like the Philippines, do you think more ASEAN countries should stand up to China? Yes or no? Tell us what you think. You can post your replies on our social media accounts on Facebook, X and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. And now to the result of last week's poll. We'd asked you, after killings of Hindus in Bangladesh, it is time the world acknowledged anti-Hindu hatred just as it does anti-Semitism. Yes or no? 68% said yes, 32% said no. So that's 68 versus 32. Thank you for letting us know what you think. We appreciate it. Right, moving on, Azerbaijan's capital, Baku, will host the 29th United Nations Climate Change Conference in November. India and much of the global south hopes to make its voice heard at the annual event. But as Jayant Das reports from New Delhi, the question is, will COP29 agree to address the issue of climate finance?
The Conference of Parties 29 or COP29 is all set to be held in Baku, the capital city of Azerbaijan, from November 11 this year. Last year, COP28, which was held in the United Arab Emirates, went down as the most attended COP till date. It attracted around 85,000 participants from around the world, with more than 150 heads of state and government. The COP28 was successful in two major outcomes. First was the decision on the outcome of the first ever global stocktake of the Paris Agreement on climate action. It would regularly assess global actions and shortcomings on the course of climate action by 2030. The next crucial outcome of COP28 was the agreement on the operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund, which would deal with negative effects of climate change despite mitigation efforts. Besides taking on the mantle of the COP28 and its achievements last year, COP29 will have some important issues to resolve. Among these, first and foremost is to tackle the issue of New Collective Quantified Goal. The New Collective Quantified Goal, or the NCQG, is a key element of the Paris Agreement, which was adopted in 2015 to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change. Specifically, the NCQG aims to set a new financial target for supporting developing countries in their climate actions post-2025. The developed countries, though having achieved the goal as per the current NCQG of providing $100 billion of assistance to developing nations in climate action every year by 2020, were late by 2 years in meeting this goal. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development said in a report that the developed countries provided $115.9 billion in climate finance in 2022, meeting the goal for the first time. The current NCQG limit of $100 billion assistance per year to developing countries is, however, far outdated and not in line with current reality. Climate experts from various fields, including government officials, are calling for a collective push from the global south on an ambitious new climate finance goal ahead of the COP29 scheduled to be held in Baku. According to a report by the independent high-level expert group on climate finance, co-chaired by the renowned British economist Nicholas Stern, annual investments need to increase by $2.4 trillion annually for developing countries, excluding China, by 2030. This is in line with the Indian stance on the role of developed countries in climate finance. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his address at COP28 presidency session on transforming climate finance, reaffirmed the need of global funding on climate action to be in trillions of dollars by 2030. He also shed light on the responsibility that the developed countries carry in aiding developing nations to combat climate change.
ग्लोबल साउथ के देशों की अपेक्षा है कि क्लाइमेट चेंज का मुकाबला करने के लिए विकसित देश उनकी अधिक से अधिक मदद करें। ये स्वाभाविक भी है और न्यायोचित भी है। फ्रेंड्स, G20 में इसे लेकर सहमति बनी है कि क्लाइमेट एक्शन के लिए 2030 तक कई ट्रिलियन डॉलर क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस की आवश्यकता है।
Furthermore, India made its 5-page submission before the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in February 2024 on the new collective quantified goal for climate finance. In its report, it underlined the need for an assistance of at least $1 trillion per year to developing countries in climate action 2025 onwards. Besides giving voice to the real plight of the global south in the face of climate change, India has also been actively involved in meeting its proposed climate action goals under the Paris Agreement. India recorded the two goals of reducing the amount of greenhouse gas emitted per unit increase in gross domestic product by 33% and achieving 43.81% of total cumulative electric power installed capacity in 2023, way before the agreed deadline of 2030. On the other hand, experts have warned that the delay of the developed countries on the $100 billion goal raises concerns on the new commitments on the way. The new finance goal, to be set from the floor of $100 billion for the post-25 period, may not be ambitious enough to help developing countries transition to a low-carbon future. While concerns remain about the interventions that the developed nations may put in reaching a desired outcome for finance goals in the COP29, only time will tell what follows. Meanwhile, we need to flip the questions regarding the climate change and global south and ponder upon it. Can the global north do more?
Promising future. Timor-Leste has come a long way since its independence. Anjana Unikrishnan traces the Southeast Asian country's journey over the past 2 decades. She filed this exclusive report from Timor-Leste's capital, Dili.
Timor-Leste, also known as East Timor, is the first sovereign state of the 21st century after it gained independence in 2002. From a colony of the Portuguese in the 17th century to a brief period of Japanese control during World War II to a province of Indonesia, the history of East Timor has been a story of continued resistance to foreign powers. This was until the United Nations stepped in to hold a referendum that overwhelmingly favored independence. The country now has a semi-presidential democratic system based on a constitution. It has seen peaceful elections and transfers of power between the political parties who are led by the old guard that led to resistance against Indonesia. What matters the most now, though, is that the country has reconciled both with its erstwhile colonizers and its troubled past to come out strong. The country has significant oil and gas reserves, which constitutes its main export along with coffee.
Timor-Leste have different airports. Actually, flight training, it required a safety locations, and we have a coastal area where absolutely suitable for flight training. So Timor-Leste have an autonomous body where we are going to invest on flight training academy for inviting students from all over the world.
The country still faces poverty and malnutrition set back by the years of colonization. The government, with the help of United Nations agencies and foreign aid, however, is determined to fix this.
India has long contributed from the time even when the referendum was there, because India played an important role. The cultural ties have been many years old actually, with the Portuguese connection in the Goa and Timor-Leste. But specifically in the field of health, there have been Indian doctors here even before I could talk about WHO actually. Within WHO, we have been very fortunate that there have been many technical officers and technical professionals over the years who have been coming to Timor-Leste.
Apart from its oil and natural gas reserves, the country of Timor-Leste gains strategic significance due to its location in the Indo-Pacific region. It is also a soon-to-be member of ASEAN. The ASEAN membership is significant as it will invite greater investments to Timor-Leste. India was one of the early countries to establish diplomatic relations with Timor-Leste and has been offering economic, technical and capacity building assistance in the sectors of IT, health and education, agriculture, fisheries and also bringing in investment.
It's Timor coffee is 100% organic and is highly quality coffee. And our organization, our cooperative Cafe Timor in Delhi, East Timor, they are exporting to Starbucks Seattle, all the way from East Timor to Seattle, 100% coffee to US market and Australia and Canada. The processing skills are pretty good.
The recent visit of the President of India saw MOUs being signed for cultural exchanges, visa waiver, among others. India's public service broadcaster Prasar Bharati signed an MOU with RTTL to strengthen cooperation in the field of radio and broadcasting through co-production of programs and exchange of personnel and training. TL has reaffirmed its support for India's permanent membership of the UNSC and is also in discussions to join International Solar Alliance and Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure.
President Draupadi Murmu's visit assumes significance in light of the 10th anniversary of India's Act East policy, the foundation of India's Act East policy being ASEAN, which Timor-Leste is soon to join. With 3 MOUs and an embassy being announced in this visit, the Delhi-Dili relations have more to offer. With camera person Saurabh Shukla, this is Anjana Unnikrishnan reporting from Delhi, Timor-Leste.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Voice of the Global South. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.